Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome to this old house. Today we're going to be plastering a ceiling, we're going to be building kitchen cabinets, and we're also going to take you to a museum where they have a terrific exhibit on the history of kitchens in America. So don't go away.
This old house is brought to you by a grant from Owens Corning Fiberglass, makers of pink fiberglass insulation, fiberglass roofing shingles, Energy Shield sheathing, and other Owens Corning building products that put houses in the pink.
Well, let's get started by visiting with Claire, our intrepid homeowner, who's busy over here removing paint from the old mantle, huh?
Yep.
You've done a beautiful job.
Yeah,
That's
not nice.
the original, so it must have had several coats?
2 coats of paint.
Yellow, as I recall.
Yellow.
It looks
A
beautiful.
mustard yellow.
Ponderosa pine.
Yeah.
Well, what else have you been doing? You've got this section of the house all cleaned up,
Yep.
insulated.
The kitchen's ready to go, I think. Put
Yeah.
some plaster up. the
We're going to be
walls.
putting blue board and plaster in here,
board
and
and
we're going to be
plaster.
starting building your kitchen cabinets today.
Great, I can't wait.
Yeah, before we get started with all of that, though, I recently took a look at a museum exhibit that's being sponsored by one of our local museums here, and it's all about the history of kitchens in America. Take a look. We're in Lexington, Massachusetts, at the Museum of our National Heritage, and we're about to tour an exhibit that was put together by 2 women at the Brattleboro Museum. And this exhibit chronicles the progress of kitchen technology since the mid-19th century. Let's start off by looking at this blow-up of a photograph or an illustration of what life may have been like in, say, 1860 in a typical upscale kitchen. You've got the lady over here. Looks like she's making an apple pie. I see the apples on the edge, and she's rolling out dough. But in terms of technology, all she has really is a very large coal-fired stove, a tank for heating water, and running cold water into probably a soapstone sink. Not much else. And it looks like everything would have been heavy and difficult to labor with. For example, take a look at this stove here, which is not a built-in one, but still, the skillets, the teapot, everything was made out of cast iron. And in order to get that thing going, you had to get up pretty early in the morning to start stoking it. Well, in the period between 1860 and 1915, the kitchen moves up to a point where it's called the efficient workshop. And one of the key things was this type of a cabinet, an organizer, if you will. It gave the woman the sense of being in total control of the household, just the way the man went out and controlled industry or controlled a factory, the woman could control the household. She has almost a mini computer over here. If she runs out of bread or brooms or whatever, she can move the white over to the red, and that tells her that she has to shop for that the next time. The flour is kept in a container right there where she can sift it right out and make that apple pie right on top of the counter there. And of course, no more coal. We've got gas stoves at this point, an efficient way to cook. You don't have to worry about getting up early to stoke it. Another 30 years go by, more progress. The electrified kitchen, the era between the wars, really, after 1915. Forget about having ice delivered, you've got an electric refrigerator. And you've got a wonderful electric cook stove with double ovens. Look at the photograph over here. Progress is even further because now we don't just have furniture in the kitchen, we're beginning to see built-in cabinets. Still some open shelves, but racks where utensils are kept out at eye level where you can see them. And of course, gadgetry is starting to come into play. Look at these interesting chrome-plated appliances that you've got down here. An early electric toaster. One thing that the exhibit makes, one point that it makes, is that although it might be easier to bake that apple pie, the expectations are changing because now the lady of the house might be expected to put out 3 apple pies. Here we are in 1945 to 1970, the period after World War II. Mrs. Consumer's dream kitchen. Finally, everything is a built-in cabinet, streamlined, probably baked enamel finishes on all these doors. You're expected to keep them very, very clean, incidentally. And if you look at the furniture that would have gone into a kitchen like this, high-pressure laminates, aluminum frames, chromed legs, polish, more gadgets. Look down here. No longer are the babies being breastfed. We've got formula for those babies. So more gadgets, more things to do, more things to wash. And if you carry that out to its logical conclusion, technology has reached a point where the kitchen, the center of the household, is more than just a place where you make food. It's a place where you entertain. It's a stage set, if you will. Everything is behind those beautiful, sleek, flush white doors. You only open them when you need to take out a particular ingredient. And talk about ingredients. we're no longer just putting out that apple pie and the pot roast. We're expected to master all sorts of different cuisines, international foods, so that the whole spectacle that goes on in the kitchen involves a mastery of gadgets and imported types of food, and in effect doing lots and lots of different things that were never contemplated in the 19th century. And I think one thing that's happening is no longer is it just the woman that's taking advantage of all this wonderful gadgetry and these new inventions, but the guys are getting in the act more and more. Interesting, nifty exhibit, huh? Well, that's an interesting look at kitchens of the past. The problem here is that we want a kitchen that's going to take you well into the future, and yet it's still going to have the flavor of a country kitchen of the past, right, Claire?
Right, that sounds good.
What's the layout that you've got all planned? How's it going to work?
Okay, well, this is the island with stools underneath, so it'll be used as a eating area.
Food preparation as well as dining, or lunching. Yeah.
Right. And over on this side, there'll be a lot of cabinets with the gas stove top and a hood
Yeah.
up on top. And then this side is going to be a sink with a dishwasher and a cabinet over to the right.
And what about back there?
This wall is a fridge, a refrigerator, with a wall oven to the left and then one cabinet to the right here.
We've got a ways to go still.
Yep.
But I believe Norm is getting started right now on building your cabinets. What kind of doors is he making for you?
Raised panel doors. Pine, raised panel pine. They should be nice.
Today I have with me Bill Dickey, a master cabinet maker who's no stranger to the type of cabinets we want to build for this old house. Now, first of all, Bill, why even bother building our own cabinets?
Well, economics plays a big factor in that, Norm. With a few simple power tools, a little time, you can make a very attractive set of kitchen cabinets, and it's a lot of fun.
It sure is. Now, cabinets have a lot of different parts. We have face frames, we have drawers, and we have doors. What kind of door do you think would be appropriate for our project?
Well, we've decided to use a raised panel door, which lends itself to this Cape Cod house that we're working on. Here you see a shop sample that we've made where we beveled the edges up to raise this panel out of the piece of wood.
Right, and now this panel, this part of the panel right here will just be slightly higher than a frame which we'll put around
Yes,
this.
it will.
Okay, I think it'll look good. Now, we have a lot of different door widths. I have some doors up to 18 inches wide, so I've had to glue some boards together to make the panel blanks. Now, I've glued two 1x6s here together, and I know people out there are asking, why not just buy 1x12?
Well, 1x6s are a lot less expensive, and two pieces will not warp as badly as one piece.
That's right. Now, I guess to do this job, to glue up these panels, the most indispensable tool that we can have are these pipe clamps. Now, this part, the orange fixed end here, and this adjustable end, you would just buy at any hardware store. And then the pipes, we can go down to the plumbing supply house and buy pipe that's threaded on one end and in all different lengths so that we have an infinite variety of clamping situations.
You never have enough of these.
That's right. Now, I've got some boards cut here for some panels, and wonder if you got any tips on what we should do when we glue these up.
What I like to do is I like to make sure that I've selected the best edge that gets glued so I don't have to apply any extra clamping pressure. I make sure that the boards are down against the pipe here so that everything is flat. We get that done, then we clamp them.
Okay, so
Put
the first
some
thing we're
glue
going to do
on.
is put some glue on.
Right.
Now, what kind of glue is that?
Well, I use yellow glue. Yellow glue's a lot better than white glue because your clamping time is a lot less, 30, 40 minutes, and you can take them out of the clamp and go on to clamping some others. Now, what I like to do is put a lot of glue on the joint and take a stick of wood when I get all the glue on here. And spread the glue out. Make sure that the joint is well covered with glue.
You want a uniform
Yes.
coverage of glue there, and it's also important that we only put glue on one piece.
Right. Make sure the joint is well covered so that you get a good glue joint all the way through.
Okay. All right, get the ends even.
Now just apply a little bit of pressure to the clamps and then arrange the wood so that all your joints are flush. That will eliminate sanding later on, Norm, when you're trying to take the glue off and also make the joint a lot.
Okay, so we want to make these as even as possible. That looks pretty good.
Don't over clamp though, the boards will want to pull out on you.
Now over here, I've already got some blanks or panels that we glued and clamped and allowed to set overnight so that the bond was completely dry. And inevitably, we've got some unevenness between the two boards, which we'll take off with the belt sander.
Here I'd like to pass along a tip that we always support the belt sander when we're sanding.
Now that these panels have been sanded down, I'm ready to cut them down to size, and from my plan, I know that this panel wants to be 27 3/4 inches. And the radial arm is the perfect tool for making this cut. Okay, Bill, those cutters are just clearing that fence.
Everything tight, Norm?
Yeah, but everything seems ready to go.
Here we're going to use the radial arm saw for the next phase of our operation, raising the panels on our doors. We rotated the motor 90 degrees, replaced the blade with a molding cutter, which has panel raising knives on the end, 3 of them, which will give us the shape we want on our door.
Okay. Now when we cut the panel, we have to keep a couple things in mind. We want to do the edges with the end grain first to prevent splitting.
That's right.
And we also want to use a piece of scrap lumber as a push stick so that I can keep my hands as far away from the blade as possible. And the whole idea is just to proceed slowly and do all 4 edges. Well, Bill, that molding cutter does a beautiful job. But before I can put this panel in the frame, this dimension is a little bit too thick, so I'd like to relieve it a little bit by taking some off the back side.
Right, Norm, and for that job we'll use a router table with the router mounted from the underneath side and the proper bit to cut it with.
Right, and as with our other operation, we want to do the end grain edge first.
That's right.
I'm going to start that up. Now to complete the door, we'll build a frame around it using this 2.5-inch stock, which I've cut a groove in it to lock the panel into place.
That's right, Norm, and then we'll use the router table as before with the same cutter, only at a different setting.
Right.
Norm, that through dado on the rail is fine, but on the stile, it'll come out and show on the top and the bottom of the door. So here we're going to do a little something different.
Okay. And what we'll do here is we want to actually plunge the piece into the bit and run it through and remove it before we get to the end so that that doesn't happen. Bill, I really like this method that you showed me to fasten these pieces together.
Well, Norm, what I do is I take a drill bit and drill a blind screw pocket into the back side of the rail and then drive a screw into the stile, and then from the front side you get a real nice flush joint.
It does a good job.
And how I do that is I take a homemade aluminum bushing with a hole drilled at 15 degrees and a 3/8 brad point drill bit with a piece of tape on the end of it to serve as a stop, and drill the hole into the piece of wood.
Beautiful. Now we'll set up to drill the second hole. Well, Bill, that does a really nice job drilling out those holes. And I like to add just a touch of glue to the end, square it up, and you can screw it together.
Norm, I like to use the number 6 panhead screw on the back of these to hold them together. Eliminate splitting.
Okay. That does a good job. Now we're ready to put the panel in. Now this is one part of the job that we don't want to use any glue. We want this panel to float, so if it expands and contracts, it won't split in half. Now we can screw the other style on, and we'll be all set. Well, not bad, Bill. Thanks a lot for all your help, but you know, there are still 35 more of these to go.
Well, let's get started then.
Okay.
Those cabinets are really going to make this kitchen. Now come on in the living room and take a close look. Isn't this fabulous? There's nothing like the minute when you get the plaster in place and you get the nice hard finishes and the white walls and it looks like it's really coming together. They've done a very nice job. The interesting story here is that John, the homeowner, did most of this work himself. We're really talking sweat equity. Of course, he had a little bit of help from his friends. Take a look. Hi, John.
Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Exciting stuff around here. It's looking
Sure
good.
is.
Hi.
Bob, I'd like to have you meet Mike Conway.
How are you, Mike?
I referred to Mike last week. He's the gentleman that taught me all about this business right here, blue boarding and plastering.
Are you still in the business?
Well, I'm more or less semi-retired, Bob. I'm taking it easy, but
So
I thought I'd come along and give John a hand with the
Kind of
house.
bailed me out a little bit here.
That's marvelous. Well, I see you've gotten all your blue board in place. You know, we hear a lot, we get a lot of letters from viewers who want to know more about blue board, so I really want to explain all there is to it.
Yeah.
The blue board itself is basically just like a wall board, a gypsum board, but
Exactly. But it has the blue paper on it, which is chemically treated to bond with the veneer plaster when it's applied to it.
Right. What's this business?
One more step we do here is that we tape all the joints, all right? And what this tape is, it's a mesh tape, Bob, and you'll notice that it's sticky on one side.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple mesh tape. It's easy to apply. The reason we put that on is that after the plaster dries, it'll shrink, and at the joint it would spread apart. The mesh tape prevents that from cracking.
But the plaster in this installation is not applied just at the joints, but across the whole expanse.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one complete skim coat.
And it'll be how thick?
Oh, approximately 1/16 of an inch.
You do have to apply the plaster first to the taped joints, however, and then proceed with the whole area.
I see, yeah. Well, let me get down off your workstage here. This is quite an elaborate setup. I guess plasterers always do this, huh? A grid of planks?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. These planks are exactly one step apart so that you never have to look down or be concerned where your next step is.
Now, has the plastering trade always depended on the dairy industry to provide them with
Well, we don't like that mention, Bob, but it is true.
it certainly makes for a handy setup, huh?
It
Sure
does.
it does.
And you've got drop cloths underneath the whole thing.
Yeah. You know, you're always going to have a lot of cleanup with plastering, so it just minimizes the effect afterwards.
Yeah, it's easier to pick it all up and take it with
Exactly.
you, too. There's also, I guess there's health concerns about the lye and the plaster and how you dispose of it, so it's nice to be able to wrap it up and take it.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's talk for a minute about, before you get started, about the tools and things. What's the setup here?
Okay, what you have here is your board and your stand, all right? If you notice that we keep it very clean and smooth, all right? That you have your plaster's trowel and hawk right here. And what you do with this situation here is that you, as the plaster is on the board,
Yeah, sure.
take your hawk down like this, scoop some up on the trowel, and then you have some material on your hawk, which you can
Sure.
then apply
But
to
one
the
of the
board.
most important things about the plastering job is the neatness involved in it, having all your tools precisely.
Like with every trade, you have to keep the tools clean.
Okay, yeah. Now, what about the plaster itself? Is it the same kind of plaster that was traditionally used for a finish coat?
No, Mike could answer that one.
Well, no, this is an entirely new application. It's actually just a finish coat of plaster. whereas in the old days you had to apply a base coat before you applied the finish coat.
Just a white powdery
This
substance.
is just a white powdery substance that you mix with water.
Are there any tricks to mixing it so that you don't get a lumpy batch?
Well, what you do is you mix it in a 5-gallon pail, like the one we have right here, and we know how much water that we want in there to start with. So
You've got the water in first.
water is already in there and pretty much exactly the same amount that we want.
Okay.
I'd like to add, too, that everything should be spotlessly clean because even a minute pebble or something will scratch the surface.
Sure. Well, shall we get a batch going?
Sure. We got Kevin right here who's going to mix for us, and once he's done there, then we'll be able to apply it.
Nice. Any tricks to how you get started?
No, not really, Bob.
First thing you want to do, Bob, is hit all your joints.
Why?
These boards have a natural bevel on the side so that we have to fill this in to prevent shrinkage.
Okay. I notice you take the precaution of wearing eye protection. Is that really important?
Well, it is. Was about 2 weeks ago, I got some plaster in my eye, and it put me out of commission for about 10, 12 days. So.
Is that right?
Yeah. So if you're doing this for a living, yeah, you want to take care of your eyes, yeah.
Okay, now you're ready to actually apply it over the main area of the board. What's the thickness that you're going for?
Well, Bob, you try to get this on just as tight as you possibly can, maybe 1/16 of an inch tops. Right. This is where it's important to have this nice and clean to prevent drags and scratches.
What we're doing now, Bob, is we're applying a scratch coat. That's just one coat, completely cover the whole board.
Yeah.
Then afterwards, we'll go back, put on our second coat, which is called doubling up.
Now, what I don't understand is how you make sure you're getting it totally level.
Well, Bob, that's more or less up to the carpenter. If the board is on level, we're going to be all right because we're just laying on 1/16 of an inch.
Yeah. Now, what are the basic advantages of this kind of a plaster job over, plain old drywall with taped joints?
Well, it gives you a much smoother finish, Bob. You know, if you want to paint your walls, all right, it'll give you a nice, hard, smooth finish. And it looks a lot better, I think.
And I suppose if you really do a good job, you're never going to see any of those seams.
Exactly. It should just look like one smooth, even plane.
I can see why you fellas always wear white. I mean, I haven't even touched a trowel in it. I got some plaster on my sleeve here.
We like to spread it around a little bit.
Okay, John, now you've covered this entire section of ceiling. What do you do next?
Okay, Bob, we're done with our scratch coat. We're going to make a second application, and that's called doubling up.
Okay. Now, how do you keep the trowel from affecting the coat that you've already put on there?
Well, I guess it's just more or less experience, Bob. That's about the size of it.
Well, John, you're saving yourself a pile of money doing it yourself. Mike, what would an installation like this cost?
Well, you'd have to figure probably in the neighborhood of $15, $16 per board. That's just for the plastering. Now
So you figure it in terms of how many 4x8 boards are up there on the ceiling and on the walls, and then you multiply that by 15 bucks.
right.
Or so.
Basically, that's the way it goes.
So as you can see, Bob, on the ceiling alone, we got 15 boards right here.
So that'd be about two and a quarter.
So it's 2 1/4 for the ceiling alone. We're not even talking the walls.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big saving. Be able to do it yourself.
See, Mike, you've got two really, really thin coats on the ceiling, and now you're already starting up on the walls.
That's right, Bob. We like to come down on the wall about a trowel's length so that we can lay in this angle at the same time.
Establish the right angle between the wall and the ceiling.
Right, right.
And when you're finished, you're not going to have a picture molding or anything covering anything up. You're going to have a perfectly straight line.
Hopefully that'll be just a perfect angle, Bob.
Again, it does depend on the carpentry a bit.
Right, that's right.
Now, Mike, when you do find defects in the framing, was it easier in the old days to hide them?
Yes, it was, Bob, because you were putting on 3/8 of an inch of base coat and using straight edges, and so you could straighten out the work.
When you take the curse off.
That's
yeah.
right.
You guys are really pros. Look at the smooth finish you're getting. But I notice you're cheating a little bit on these corners. What kind of a tool is that?
Well, this is what we call a butterfly, Bob.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it, just as in the area where the tape is, that natural bevel I was talking about on the board, that also applies here in the angle. So we
In the
use
corner.
this to fill in that beveled portion.
Well, Mike, I thought you'd be finished by now. You're still not satisfied, huh?
No, we're not, Bob. We've applied all the plaster that we're going to, but now begins the process of troweling it down and smoothing it out and finishing it.
And that's why you add a little bit of water?
That's right. Well, this helps secure it and also makes the trowel slide a bit easier.
Sure. And hopefully you won't need any sandpaper or anything like that, right?
Sandpapering, Bob? I should hope not after we get through.
John, it's looking good. Now, you're going into the business, right?
That's right, Bob.
And we ought to have a cup of coffee together later. I got a couple of jobs you might want to look at.
Oh, yeah? Wow. Don't come cheap.